Mr. Richard Alam from Maranjau Junior Secondary School. I'm very happy to be here once more. Welcome to this class. This is Elimu Live at KUTV. Today we are going to discuss biology, Form 3, Topic 3, that is reproduction. And the subtopic is reproduction in animals, especially the menstrual cycle. Welcome. Now, before we proceed, we need to understand something, especially in human beings. We have males and females, so I would like us to start by understanding a few terms. And the first term that I want us to understand in a simple term is sex. Now, sex refers to being male or female. Sex refers to being male and female. And that is why in reproduction, the reproductive organs of male and female are unique and distinct and perform different functions. That's the first definition I would like us to have. Number two, I would like us to understand the term gender. Now, gender is the act of being male or female and the role attached to it according to the society. Now, there is more observable differences between males and females. For example, in the reproductive structure, males have penis while females have vagina. That is the primary sexual characteristic. That is the primary sexual characteristics in male and female. Just like in the school setup, when you begin to study, we have the preschool, primary, secondary, and tertiary institutions. So when we move from primary, then we are able to advance to secondary school. Therefore, in reproduction, we also have primary sexual characteristic, then we have secondary sexual characteristics. Now, primary sexual characteristics is the one we have mentioned, that in males they have penis and in females they have the vagina. That is a clear distinction between the two. But growth being a continuous process, from birth, the males and the females, they grow up to a certain point called puberty. Puberty is a stage that begins for females at ages 10 to age 12. That is when the age of puberty begins. And in males, is about 12 years to 14 years of age. Therefore, during this stage, there is marked development, especially in the physical. There are a lot of changes that occur during this stage. And these changes are brought about by the role of various hormones in the human body. Now, there are different hormones that are being released, but two important hormones that control these characteristics is what we call the follicle stimulating hormone and the luteinizing hormone, which has different functions in both male and female. Now, based on this, there are different changes that occur. Physical changes in females. That is what I'm going to focus on today so that we can understand the menstrual cycle. Number one, physical change is growth of hair in the pubic parts. Now, as a young girl, when you experience that you're beginning to see hairs growing on the armpits and the private parts, it does not mean that you are unwell or you are experiencing some challenges. It means that your growth is proceeding at the required pace, and that is good. Number 2 is the widening of hips and the widening of the pelvic girdle. So that is also another physical signs that you observe that shows that indeed you are at the puberty stage. Another change that is experienced is the beginning of menstrual cycle. Now, as a female, you'll begin to experience what is called the menstrual cycle. That is what we are going to understand today, its importance and how is it brought about. Now, let's start by menstrual cycle. And before that, let us understand something. There's something called reproduction. Now, there's a way in which reproduction is related to menstrual cycle. Reproduction is the fusion of male and female gametes. And the male gametes is the sperms, and the female gametes is the ovum. So there's a way in which fertilization is related to menstrual cycle. Now, after defining fertilization, we have observed that fertilization is the fusion of male and female gametes. Now, if fertilization occurs, it leads to pregnancy, and the pregnancy will last for 9 months in humans. During this stage, the process of menstruation will stop automatically if fertilization occurred. But if fertilization fails to occur, then you realize that the menstruation will always continue until that time when fertilization will occur. Now, gamete production, that is the production of ovum, is cyclical, and it takes about 28 days in a month. I want you to understand this. It is 28 days, and this 28 days does not mean that it begins on the first day of a normal month. Let's say, for example, today is 1st May. So we cannot say that your cycle is going to begin on 1st May. You cannot start counting on 1st May. When it begins, whether it is in the middle of the month or at the end of the month or at the beginning of the month, that becomes the first day of the first day of the cycle. And therefore, before you experience the menstruation, this cycle, it is always characterized by a few signs. That is abdominal pain, back pains. Such are the events that leads to the menstrual cycle. Then at the onset of the menstrual cycle, the pituitary gland is stimulated to release an hormone, that is follicle stimulating hormone, that causes the Graafian follicle to develop in the ovary. That is one of the main hormones that is being released. There's no pen around? No? Yeah, so that is one of the hormones, the follicle stimulating hormone. Then we have another hormone that is very important. The follicle stimulating hormone also stimulates the ovary to release another hormone called estrogen. It will interest you to know as a student that these hormones are released in sequence and in series. first of all, we begin with the first hormone, that is the follicle stimulating hormone. And the follicle stimulating hormone is always followed by an hormone called estrogen. Now, these hormones are the ones that control and regulate the cycle. So we have the first hormone, that is follicle stimulating hormone, which is abbreviated as FSH. Now, as a student, if you mention follicle stimulating hormone, you may meet this question: explain the role of various hormones in the menstrual cycle. Then the first point that you'll be able to mention is the follicle stimulating hormone. Then maybe you happen to forget, you don't know what is follicle stimulating hormone, but there's this point that you will not fail to remember. And this is the point. When you write follicle stimulating hormone, the next point that you'll not forget is that follicle stimulating hormone stimulate production of estrogen. Then follicle stimulating hormone. Now let's see what is the effect of estrogen in blood. When estrogen is released, it brings about the repair and healing of endometrium. As we always say, that when the menstrual cycle begins, it begins on day 1, which is characterized by flow of blood called menses. Now, as a young girl or as a lady or as a woman, when you see the flow of blood, that is the first day of the cycle. And what does it indicate? It indicates that fertilization failed to occur, and therefore the walls of the uterus is slid off, and that is what passes out in form of menses. Now, the body releases estrogen that, number 1, prepares the body for, it brings about the healing and repair of the endometrium. That is the inner wall, the lining of the uterus. Then another role of estrogen is that it stimulates the release of luteinizing hormone, which is abbreviated as LH, luteinizing hormone. Now you'll realize that as the days begin, as the menstrual flow begins in the first days up to the 5th day, you realize that the level of estrogen will be in high amount to facilitate the healing and repair of endometrium. Then after that, the estrogen will stimulate the release of luteinizing hormone, which is abbreviated as LH, which is important in the following ways. The major roles. Number 1, it stimulates the maturation of Graafian follicle. Now, Graafian follicle, it stimulates the maturation of Graafian follicle. Number 2, it stimulates ovulation. Now, what is ovulation? Ovulation is the process by which a mature Graafian follicle bursts open to release the ovum. Then, so that is LH. So you'll realize that during the day of ovulation, the level of luteinizing hormone in the blood will always be very high. Now, when is the day of ovulation? The day of ovulation is always on the 14th day of the cycle. Now, what is 14th day? Let's see. This is the 14th day of the cycle when ovulation takes place. Now, on this day, the concentration of luteinizing hormone is highest, so that the mature Graafian follicle burst open to release the ovum. Now, it will also be important to understand this cycle because there are a lot of challenges that comes with this cycle. Maybe unprecedented pregnancies, early pregnancies, because the young girls and the women have not a mastery of how their body function. So, on the 14th day, that is when ovulation occurs. Now, during this day, now you can also ask, now when are you likely? When are you likely to conceive? Now, on the 14th day, that is when ovulation occurs. Then you also need to understand that the ovum can stay in the reproductive system after the release for about 24 hours to 48 hours. At the same time, the sperms will also be able to remain viable or remain alive in the system for about 48 hours. Therefore, if the release of ovum, that is ovulation, occurs on the 14th day, now, when are the possible days that a conception can occur? Now, 14th day, then we'll have 2 days behind. That will be on the 12th day because the ovum and the sperms can stay in the system, in the body, for about 48 hours. Therefore, if ovulation occurs on the 14th day and you happen to experience sexual intercourse, you happen to have sexual intercourse on the 14th day, then there is 100% chances of conception. And also, in the next 24 hours, that is 15th day, and in the next 24 hours, that is on 16th day, you realize that during these days, there is higher chances of conception. Because once the ovum is released, then when the sperm is introduced into the reproductive system, then the chances of conception is very high. Now, these are what we call the fertile days and also the safe days. So when you start counting by day 1 when you observe the flow of blood. When the flow of blood stops, the cycle continues. You continue recording as I'm doing in the table here. So by the time you arrive at the 14th day, for a normal cycle, regular normal cycle for 28 days, then the ovulation day will always be on the 14th day. That means that there are higher chances of conception between the 12th up to 16th day. That is a total of 5 days within a monthly cycle of 28 days. That is when the woman is more likely to conceive. And these 5 days are the ones that are giving women sleepless nights so that they may resort to using other birth control pills or birth control means or contraceptives which may not be promoting their health, just managing this. Now that is what happens. Now after ovulation, then that ovulation is brought about by luteinizing hormone, which you have said is abbreviated as LH. Now, as luteinizing hormone increases in amount, then it stimulates the corpus luteum to secrete progesterone. Now, another hormone we are going to discuss is progesterone. Progesterone. Now, progesterone is the 4th hormone in the menstrual cycle. And this progesterone is very, very important in the menstrual cycle. Very, very important in the menstrual cycle based on the role that it plays. Now, let's discuss the first role of progesterone. Progesterone stimulates the thickening of the endometrium, that is the inner lining of the uterine wall. That is the first role of progesterone. Now, the inner lining, why must the inner lining be thick? It always prepares for implantation of the blastocyst. So, if fertilization occurs, then the blastocyst that is formed after the fusion of sperms and ovum will have to implant or attach itself to the wall of the uterus so that it begins the gestation period. During this period, the wall of the uterus is expected to be thick, having more blood supply, and that is one role of progesterone. Now, number 2, as the level increases, then it increases. The increase in progesterone inhibits the pituitary gland from releasing what is called luteinizing hormone. And the next point, it causes the corpus luteum to degenerate. Now, when the corpus luteum degenerates, then it reduces the level of progesterone. And now, the drop in level of progesterone causes the wall of endometrium to slash off or to be broken. The thickness now is being broken. And when the thickness is broken, it results in tissue debris which are being removed out, and they flow out in form of blood. That is called menses. And that cycle continues to repeat itself for another 28 days as long as fertilization does not occur. And therefore, one good indication, one clear indication that a fertilization has occurred is the fact that when you miss the menses, when you miss the flow of blood in your regular days, then you are supposed to visit a health facility and check so that you can be able to understand, or you can be able to direct it on what is wrong. But there chances are, 1, fertilization occurred, and therefore menstruation, as we mentioned earlier, had stopped. Now, during this menstruation, especially during ovulation, there is always, in females, you realize that there's always a rise in body temperature. During these days, you see that your body temperature rises. That is during ovulation. That one should not worry you. It is just normal. It means that your body is functioning normally. Then, during pregnancy, now, if fertilization does not occur, then the menses will continue to appear because the wall of the uterus will be slouched off. But if fertilization occurs, then there is another hormone that will always be released, and this hormone is called human gonadotrophic hormone, that you always abbreviate as HCG. Now, this human gonadotrophic hormone is always excreted in urine. Once it is released, it is always expressed in urine. So once you go for urination, it forms part of the urine. It becomes one of the components of urine during that time. And therefore, this human gonadotrophic hormone is being used to confirm the pregnancy during a pregnancy test. Because when fertilization occurs, then the human gonadotrophic hormone will always be released. Now, once this hormone is released, then it is released into the blood and it is passed through the urine. And that is why when you test pregnancy, then you need the urine to get the best result, because the HCG, the human gonadotrophic hormone, will be at high concentration, especially in the first 2 weeks of pregnancy. That one will indicate that fertilization now has occurred, and that is what we call pregnancy. And when the pregnancy occurs, then the level of progesterone will now rise to maintain the pregnancy. How does it maintain the pregnancy? Increase in level of progesterone increases the blood supply to the walls of endometrium, the inner walls of the uterus, and it makes it easy for the implantation of the blastocysts to occur. At the same time, it will enable the supply of nutrients to the blastocysts and also the removal of wastes from the blastocyst. Now that is how the progesterone maintains the pregnancy. Now, apart from that, there is a concept that we also need to understand that is related to this menstrual cycle. Now, one of the most important concepts is hygiene. During this period, then there is need to maintain high level of hygiene so that we can minimize, first of all, the self-esteem. Menstruation is not an inability, it is not a disability, it is not something that should lower down the self-esteem of a girl or of a woman. Therefore, during this period, there is need to have proper hygiene that is easily achieved through the use of sanitary towels. Now, having in mind that this experience begins for girls when they are at about ages 10 to 12 or 13 years or 14 years, during this stage, as they also experience other changes including increase in size of breasts, these young girls may feel that they are sexually ripe, but that is not the case. So we need to guide them in the right way. So as a parent or as a guardian, you need to provide your daughters with sanitary pads so that they can maintain high standard of hygiene, so that they can have the comfort when they go to school, when they go to the market, when they go to the church, or anywhere they pass by. That is one. And number two, so that they don't ask for these pads from somewhere, maybe border riders or anybody that they meet around. When you fail to provide this, then they will get this from their friends. And during this period, they will be interacting maybe with men who give them cheap money and who supplies this on your behalf. And therefore, they may engage in sexual intercourse, which will result in pregnancy. So you may be surprised at home when your child who is 12 years of age is pregnant, and you may not understand. So during this stage, we need to be very close with these learners and guide them. And also in our schools, we are also trying the best. I also urge the administrators to provide these sanitary towels to the young girls for free. It is another way of motivating and boosting their confidence in learning and also in educational program. Another concept that is related to menstruation that you need to understand is the use of contraceptives. Now, it is very sad to note that there are some schools that give contraceptive to learners who have not even given birth. This is very wrong. What happens? You know, when you give contraceptives, contraceptive is not food. It is chemical. It is estrogen that is synthesized, that is generic. It is follicle stimulating hormone. It is progesterone that is being infused into the body. And therefore, there are some challenges that comes with use of contraceptive on menstrual cycle if proper care is not taken, or if the advice of a certified medical practitioner is not indulged. For example, you realize that now the cycle will be missing completely. Others will miss it for 6 months, others for 1 year. And number two, the flow of blood or the flow of menses will be very heavy, meaning that the volume of the menses, first of all, will increase, and it will also flow for many days. That is 5 days, 7 days, others even go for 1 month. And number three, the experience will be very, very painful. The students or the women will be experiencing a surge or an excruciating pain in their body during this time, which is not expected. Now, the menstrual cycle is a normal event that is part of growth in females, and therefore it should be as normal as possible with minimal signs, minimal cramps, minimal pains. But when you see you're experiencing a lot of pains, last time I saw one of my students, she experienced a lot of pain to the point that she was crying and crawling on the ground. Now, such are the signs that we experience in our schools. So that may communicate a lot. One, it may mean that the blood is contaminated. Your blood is contaminated, either it's too acidic, or there are a lot of chemicals in your body that needs cleansing. So when you experience such signs, don't take it as something that is normal. You need to seek the indulgence of medical practitioner so that you can get immediate assistance. Now, there's something else that is also related to menstrual cycle, and this is what we call menopause. This is what we call menopause. Now, menopause is the permanent end of fertility. Menopause is the permanent end of fertility. So this is a period when a woman is not able to conceive. And when you are not able to conceive, then it means that the process of reproduction is affected. You cannot produce new individual of the same kind. You cannot produce a new baby. And in most cases, this menopause, this stage comes at the age of 40 to 50. So that is when the menopause begins to come in, and therefore the menstruation stops. So when it stops, it means that ovulation has also stopped and the chances of conception are now reduced. And this is not a standard. You can be 55 or 50, but you are still having your cycle normally. There are other factors which affect. So when you say 40 to 50, it is not a rule. It is not a standard. There are other factors, including health condition, the type of nutrition, chronic diseases that can also affect this. So that is what you expect. Now, during this period, how will you know? Which are the indicators that you are almost into the menopause? Number one, it is characterized by decrease in number of Graafian follicles. And as we had stated earlier, it is the Graafian follicles that contain the ovum. So when they mature, when they mature Graafian follicle burst, they release the ovum. So during menopause, the number of Graafian follicle reduces. Another one is the follicles becomes less sensitive to follicle stimulating hormone. The follicle become less sensitive to follicle stimulating hormone. Then the secretion of estrogen also reduces during this period. Then now we have the signs and symptoms that can indicate to you that you are almost or you are at the stage of experiencing menopause. Number one is night sweat. But don't be scared, don't be worried so much when you say night sweat, because night sweat is maybe a common sign that is experienced with other medical conditions like tuberculosis and any other diseases that leads to increase in body temperature. And therefore, you need not to be worried unless you visit medical practitioner who shall have carried out differential diagnosis to be able to explain to you why you are experiencing night sweat. As at that, it just remains to be an indicator. Another one is random hot flashes, especially during the day. So that one is also an indicator, especially when you are at the age of 40, 50. Changes in mood that show depression. Changes in mood that show depression. Again, you also need to experience and understand. Maybe you lost a loved one, automatically you'll have changes in mood. So you don't use that situation to justify that maybe you are experiencing menopause. But when your mood changes and you are just normal, but the mood changes, that is when it becomes an indicator. Then we have loss of minerals such as calcium, which leads to softening of bones. That condition is called osteoporosis. That is loss of calcium from bones. Now, at least we have learned something on the menstrual cycle. Then we have to also understand another important aspect of menstrual cycle. Now, as we continue with this lesson, just remember that this is Elimu Live at KUTV. Always tune in for the most engaging lessons as we simplify biology and other disciplines so that our students can get excellent results. So keep your questions coming through the number there displayed in the screen and your comments so that you always learn together. Parents, don't forget to always tune in to KUTV at Elimu Live. That is where we transform and change the trends in Kenya's education system. Now, let's proceed. Now, during menstruation, there's another key aspect. Apart from hygiene, the next one is nutrition aspect of it. Now, nutrition is the process by which living organisms acquire and utilize nutrients. Now, that is nutrition. It's the process by which living organisms acquire and utilize nutrients. Now, to acquire is to get. So, we are supposed to get the nutrients, that is through the foods we eat. Then when we get the nutrients, then the nutrients, first of all, the food is digested, then broken down into soluble form that can be absorbed into the body. Then once in the body, then the various nutrients that we have, that is the proteins, the carbohydrates, and the vitamins, once absorbed in the body, they are going to perform the specific roles that they're supposed to be doing. For example, carbohydrates will give the body energy. That is their main function. Proteins will be responsible for repair of body tissues and also body building. Then we have the vitamins, which are responsible for protecting the body against pathogens, that is the disease-causing microorganism. Now, how is nutrition a very important component that should be integrated into the menstrual cycle? Now, during the menstrual cycle, as we have seen, there is a loss of blood. And when there's loss of blood, then it means that we have to replace this blood that is lost. That is one. So we have to maintain the menstrual cycle, one, by ensuring that we give the girls and the women foods that are rich in iron. Why? Because iron is required for formation of hemoglobin, which is a protein responsible for the red coloring matter in blood. Now, when the diet is rich in iron, then there's going to be formation of hemoglobin, and the girl who undergoes the menstrual cycle will be able to maintain the body status without very many challenges which are nutritional. And at the same time, it is going to minimize the chances of anemia which may creep in. Because the flow differs, there are people may lose large volumes of blood. So that is why nutrition aspect is very important. Number two is vitamin K. Vitamin K is very important for blood clotting. That is to prevent prolonged bleeding. Yes, sometimes you may be experiencing menses for 10 days. And maybe it is just due to a simple fact that the level of vitamin K in your body has gone down. Now, nutrition becomes a very integral part that has to be considered for a healthy menstrual cycle, so that vitamin K is also provided in adequate amount. Another important vitamin is vitamin C, that is very, very much important for healing the uterine wall, and it also promotes absorption of iron from food. Now, during this time, it is important to note that proper nutrition is very important. Proper nutrition is required to ensure that the minerals and the vitamins which are responsible and associated with the menstrual cycle are provided in adequate amounts. And that is iron, vitamin K, and also vitamin C, which is very important in the healing of the uterine wall and also in the absorption of iron. So it is very important to provide a plane of nutrition, including the foods that are rich, in vitamin C, that is orange and most fruits, among other fruits that you need to take in to form part of the diet. Then, apart from that, we have to understand in summary now, we need to understand in the cycle, the fertility period. It is when ovulation occurs, that is on the 14th day, 15th day, and 16th day, because that is after 48 hours, and also on the 12th day, because of the length of stay of the gametes, in the human, in the female's reproductive system. Now, having understood that, I would also like to emphasize on the role of the various hormones, or just to give the student a format on how to remember the hormones in the female reproductive system. So you use this formulae to remember the hormones, and this formula is what we call, as we write it, we call it FOLP. We write it this way. So when you write this formula down, that is FOLP. That is the follicle stimulating hormone, estrogen, luteinizing hormone, and progesterone. So these hormones are produced in this sequence, follicle stimulating hormone being the first and progesterone being the last. Having come up to this point, I want to believe that we have understood and we have learned something on the menstrual cycle. And first of all, we have gained the knowledge on the menstrual cycle, and we have also gained the skills on how to manage the menstrual cycle, and we have also shaped and have a change in attitude on how to take care of those who are experiencing the menstrual cycle, so that they can also have the comfort and feel part of the society. Now, as we come to a close, I will just encourage you, as I did last time, that every day as a learner, before you sleep, just revise in biology, as I always say, just a question which is 2 marks or 5 marks every day before you sleep. In 1 year, you shall have revised very many questions that are going to make you to excel. And number 2, in the papers that we have in paper 1 in biology, you can get this question on menstruation, and you can also get it in paper 2. But in paper 1, it is a reading paper. So the trick is, sit down with the notes, read from page 1 to page last, because you'll ask you few questions, short structured questions, which are 1 mark, 2 marks, and you need to know the exact place. So to be a good student who is excelling in paper 1, you are supposed to read from number 1, first page, to the last page. In paper 2, it is a structured question. You need to practice writing essays every day and graphs on a daily basis so that you are well conversant. Then for practical lessons, just ensure that you are reading from Get It Right. You read the practicals which are there, do a lot of practice, and you also read from Remedial Biology, practical guide, plus what the teachers are guiding you in your various schools, and your desire to rise. Then you just perform well in biology, knowing that biology is the gateway and is the key to life sciences. That is medicine, environmental studies, molecular biology, veterinary medicine, all courses which are revolving around life sciences. You need to be having a good understanding in biology, and it is possible, and you can do it. When you read every day, you'll be giving the correct spelling and the correct response without having very many problems. So that is what I would like to give my students. And don't forget to follow, don't forget to like Elimu Live at KUTV. Anytime you feel that you want to get some engaging lessons with your phones, tablets, and laptops, just a click, then you'll be able to watch the engaging lessons so that you grow. We are very happy when you grow, when you excel, so that we get more professionals in life through this channel that is purely and passionately education oriented. Now that is what I would like the students to have, and do a lot of practice. When you practice, you master. When you master, you understand. When you understand, you become more competent. And when you become more competent, you deliver. So, thank you very much. I'm Mr. Alam Richard from Maranjao Junior Secondary School. I've taken you through biology, and just keep learning, keep working hard, keep following Elimu TV, Elimu Live at KUTV. Yes, and just do your best. Yes, for students, I want to wish you all the best. You can follow me at my page at Alam Richard so that you learn more. Like this show, Elimu Live. This is where professional and transformed. Thank you.
Are you an aspiring media practitioner, a graduate, or you just want to advance your skills?